For a man who literally burnt out his eyes, Lee Sin sure does rely a lot on vision. Patch 8.4 saw the removal of Tracker's Knife, aka Green Smite, aka Smite Stone. Blue Smite and Red Smite are still around, but no more free wards on a jungle upgrade. Riot's reasoning behind this is that Green Smite is far too impactful in pro play, and they want to tone that down. Honestly, by itself, I actually think that's a really good idea. The jungler is that geezer who's access to the whole map, and giving that person the ability to lay vision down all over the place is a bit too much, and hopefully with the removal of Green Smite we'll see more interesting early games with more action due to less vision cockblock. However, there is that one champion, that one unique case, who relies on Green Smite not primarily for vision, but because it enables his entire kit. That person, of course, is Lee Sin. So there's no Green Smite, and in 8.2, Sightstone was also removed as a base item and instead tied into the support quest upgrades. So what does this mean overall for Lee Sin? Well, it is about as bad as you think. Taking away wards from Lee Sin is like taking away legs from Usain Bolt or microtransactions from EA. The intent is to provide players with a sense of pride and accomplishment for having to rely on lane minions or trinket wards to make those sexy Lee Sin plays. And it's not just the sexy Lee Sin plays that he relies on wards for. It's also for escaping, engaging, outplaying, and even his ideal damage combos. They really do enable basically everything he wants to do. So no easy way to get ward hops on Lee Sin anymore. That's a bit of a gimp right there. And let's be real, Lee Sin was already pretty bloody wank as a champion this patch. Doesn't really suit the meta. It's kind of like when your racist grandma says something sexist. Yeah, that's pretty bad, but if we're being honest, we're already pretty far gone. But essentially now you have three options for how you want to play Lee Sin without this Green Smite. First option is you buy the Targons and try and complete the quests by taxing minions with the passive and punching players with the Bandit on hit gold. And of course, once you complete that quest, you do get access to the Sightstone. Your second option is to stack up on control wards and use those to ward hop. And the third and final option you have is to do nothing about it and just rely on your trinket wards. None of these options really sound that great. It's like brushing your teeth and being forced to choose what fruit juice to wash it down with. But let's go through the pros and cons of each of these and see which one we like the most. For the Targons, the pros are that when you complete the quest, you do get a 3-stack ward item Sightstone. Another pro is you earn extra gold throughout the game, eventually getting your cost back if the game goes late enough. If you upgrade the Targons too, it becomes a very gold efficient item with decent stats for Lee Sin, health, CDR. But the cons are that you have to sink gold into it, which you really don't want to do in the early game because Lee wants that early damage to get that early advantage over the enemy jungler. On top of that, the Relic Shield or the Targons is extremely gold inefficient for its stats. It's balanced around its passive, which the jungler really doesn't get much use out of at all. So the gold you're sinking into it basically is not gold you're getting into stats. And finally, of course, it takes a pretty long time to get that quest completed, to get the 500 gold earned from the item in order to get your Sightstone. So all in all, you're definitely gimping yourself having to buy this in the early game and even parts of the mid game, but it is the best long-term solution because once you complete the quest, it's pretty solid. Our second solution with the control wards, the pros for these are that they're cheap, on-demand ward hops. You don't have to sink loads of gold into anything like you do with Targons. In addition, they're accessible right from the get-go in the very early game. No need to have to wait for ages before you can use your ward hops. The cons of doing this though is that you're basically pissing away gold every time you ward hop, which in the long run can get quite expensive. And if you're using these control wards as ward hops, you can't have them down for vision. And considering you're probably going to have to save your trinket vision for ward hops, it means that not having a control ward down for vision is kind of a big deal. So all in all with that, not really ideal, but works right from the start at least. And the last option, the do nothing option, very good option here if you want to grow up to be an unsuccessful sleepy man child. Highly recommend it for that one. But as far as Lee Sin is concerned, the pros of doing this is that it costs absolutely nothing. You're not sinking any gold into anything. You don't have to save an inventory slot for your ward hops either, and you can use your control ward for vision. The downside to this though is you do have a much more limited warding availability, and like I mentioned before, you probably won't be able to use your trinkets for vision. That will just about do it for the pros and cons of our 3 options. So what seems like the best solution out of those 3? Honestly, I think that's actually really hard to say. I feel like maybe sitting on the Relic Shield, the 350 gold intro version of Targon's, you just sit on that, let that quest work its magic, and once you've completed it, then you can upgrade it so you get that sight stone and you're not sitting on all those wasted stats. I think that's not a terrible idea. The only problem with sitting on the 350 gold version of Targon's is that it takes longer to stack up. So you're going to go even longer in your game without having your sight stone and your ward hops. I think it's definitely worth thinking about at least. Or you could just use a mix of the second option and the third option, which is using control wards and then using your trinkets. But I think honestly, most importantly for all of this, you should adapt your playstyle so you are less reliant on ward hops in general. Look for minions to jump to, be more careful with invades so you don't have to blow your ward hops to escape. Don't use your trinket wards for vision and stuff like I mentioned before. You know, that kind of thing. And on a closing note, a bit of a random note here, before we end, a potential fix for Lee Sin could be to give him a passive that modifies his trinket. Basically make it so that trinket wards charge faster, giving him trinket wards more frequently, but at the downside of making them have a much shorter duration, so you can use them for water hops, but they're not OP for vision. I saw that out on Reddit, and I thought it was a fairly good suggestion, you know, tweak it a little bit, some fine tuning. I kind of like that. But either way, what do you guys think about Lee Sin? Do you think Lee Sin is RIP? Do you think he'll still be fine, just a bit more stingy with your ward hops, and things will be basically as they were before? Let me know what you think about it down below in the comments, guys. Most importantly, thanks so much for watching. Go check out my second gameplay channel and my stream. The links to those are in the description. Most importantly, guys, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day, and I will see you in my next video.